For staying with Daybreak, keep your views coming at Trevor on Pidge at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We're talking about the final push, and it's all about the youth view. There's a lot going on the dailies here. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Let me introduce my guests real quick. Beginning from my immediate left, Wilkister Aduma, Executive Director, Run for Office. Thank you so much for making time. Yeah. And Suleiman Bashir, Advocate of the High Court. Asante sana for making time, Suleiman. Let's start off with the Daily Nation front page. Register behind the fight. Manual or digital? Raila wins big as court orders IBC to use printed list of voters alongside the electronic kits on election day. Inside the arguments for and against the two systems and what the decision means for Chebukati, poll rivals and voters. Wilkister, now, for voters, what does this mean for you as a voter? Was this the right decision?
I think the court has done I'd say well in putting public trust, especially the electoral management body, because there's that shadow of doubt for most people that, you know, the fact that we're only using an electronic gadget and not looking at, you know, any other reference material in terms of the voter register did give some people a lot of worry as to whether we are going to really have, you know, the systems working as the electoral management body had assured Kenyans. So I feel this is a win for Kenyans because they're also in the space where they want to maintain their trust in the electoral management body. And this also, you know, goes to help towards a peaceful election, because some of the reasons why sometimes we have discord is because of issues like this, especially on transparency and clarity for the average voter to understand the processes.
Yeah. And Bashir, you know, IBC is claiming that the printed register, which discloses national identity numbers of a voter, among other details, has previously been abused to facilitate voting by absentee voters. So is this a good thing or a bad thing?
You see, Trevor, I think this conversation on digital and manual registers is not something that has started yesterday. It began in 2017. We have had a similar dispute before the High Court, which has again found its way before the Court of Appeal. I think the argument is still the same. You know, IBC was asked at the time, IBC was trying to advocate for using both registers. That was the interest of the IBC at the time. We found ourselves before the Supreme Court in Presidential Petition number 1 of 2017. Key questions came about. Those questions were to do with questions on network coverage, effectiveness of the kits used, and all those issues came up. And again, if I give you a picture of what happened in 2017, a number of kits failed. You know, Kenyans had to use the manual register at the time. This time round, some of the questions that the good Judge Thande had asked herself is, and asked the IEBC, are you assuring Kenyans that the digital register shall function 100%? In other words, have you put in place an administrative arrangement that will not jeopardize the democracy of the people of Kenya? And the IEBC could not assure the courts of law that we have had all the issues that were raised in the presidential petition of 2017 addressed. Key amongst them, some of the documents that were filed by the IBC in this particular court case is that about 1,111 polling stations do not or shall not enjoy either the 2G or 3G network coverage. And I think these are key issues or key questions that may again find themselves before the Supreme Court in the event we have a petition going forward. And I think what the Court of Law is trying to do is it's trying to address all the critical concerns that were raised by the Supreme Court. And I think, unfortunately, that particular concern has not been raised. So what the court is saying is, firstly, prioritize using the digital register as your primary platform. In the event this fails, any other complementary mechanism that you may have, you know, Section 44A does not talk about the manual register. It talks about a complementary mechanism. In other words, it is to ensure that I, as a voter, the moment I go to a polling station, I go to vote, that I'm assured of using, I'm assured of voting at the end of the day. You know, the people of Kenya are more concerned about being given the opportunity to vote. The question on ensuring that this register is stolen and this is not stolen is an obligation on the part of IEBC. That is what the IEBC needs to address. So what happens is if IEBC is talking about questions of stealing from the manual register as it is, the first priority is given to the digital register. If IEBC assures the people of Kenya that 100% those kits shall work, then we shall not need the manual register. The reason or the only stage at which we shall need the manual register is if their need for the use of that particular platform arises where the kits fail. And I think IEBC can prove itself by showing that those kits shall work.
Yeah.
In the event those kits fail, you know, they have also told us that about 3 or 4 kits shall be functionable, if one kit fails, another kit shall be availed.
Yeah.
All those assurances were given to us. Nobody is disputing that. All the IEBC is being told is by those petitioners, you know. And again, it's quite interesting that the petitioners were civil society organizations. You know, the civil society groups were the ones that were advocating for the assurance of a complementary mechanism. However, where we are, we do not have another sufficient complementary mechanism. If you ask IEBC shall again give you an option of another technology. You know, it again tells you of something to do with a technology use. Yeah. It will tell you, yes, the second plan B that we have is, if this kit fails, we'll give you another kit. The thing is, are you still assuring us that in the event all the 3 kits fail, a voter shall not go home without voting? You know, the right of a voter is so crucial to the courts that we need to have a system at the end of the day to assure the people of Kenya that they vote. So for me as a voter, I find the outcome of the High Court direction as being quite sound. You know, the court is just preparing us to the worst, in the event the worst comes to the worst. And also, if these kind of issues are not addressed at this stage, we may again find ourselves before the Supreme Court, and we may be faced with the same situation where we were faced with, because the same concerns were not addressed. Yeah. So I think it's a sound direction, and we hope IEBC shall comply with this. It doesn't have the time to again rush to the Court of Appeal maybe to stay this decision. We have seen that has been done in the case of one of the presidential aspirants. You remember the one who had gone to the Court of Appeal, to the High Court at the time. The IEBC appealed, so because the initial direction of the High Court was to have to be given an opportunity to have his papers submitted. You remember the case of the musician aspirant. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, we hope that the IEBC shall not give us a reason to doubt this. And however, one of the things I also wish to discern is that the manual register the courts talked about are different from what has been pinned outside the polling stations. What we need is a register that the IEBC officials who are seated there, when my name is not found on the list, a register that is there, one that my name can be struck out. That is the kind of register we are talking about. Yeah. We are not talking about that particular list that has been pinned on at the entrance of the polling station. Yeah,
but Wilkister, in a country where we suffer from trust deficit, right, there are those who are saying that generally the voter turnout is never really 100%. It's usually 70 at most. If you have 2 mechanisms, what is stopping the allegations of rigging from coming in? Because the reason why we needed the electronic identification is that so that whoever votes, their biometrics are picked and it is evidence that they were actually at the polling station. When there's a manual register, then you can easily say so-and-so voted, but we didn't see that person. Yeah, all they need to do is just cancel the name. Doesn't that then open the Pandora's box in a country where there's trust deficit, where people will say, this is another avenue of rigging?
I think one of the reasons why we also have good legislation and fail to follow through is because we try to legislate that trust. Particularly, a very good example is Chapter 6 of our Constitution, which is very unimplementable when you look at it. But coming to where, you know, we have the manual voter register and the KIMS kit that's going to be used. I mean, I think the direction of the court was that once you're identified on the KIMS kit and then you're struck off the manual register so that then you go ahead and vote. I agree with you that there's a level of, you know, people that probably, you know, if the register is there and people didn't show up to vote, especially using the KIMS kit and then striking off, that people would feel that maybe someone can manipulate the manual voter register. However, as put here, for me, it looks like a complementary measure to make sure that there's sort of a tally between what we have on the KIMS kit and what we have on the manual register. So I am not worried as to a manipulation of the manual register to have, you know, either rigging or something like that. For me, it even enhances the process in terms of, you know, transparency and openness to conduct the election or to vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Bashir, coming this late in the day, because there's an argument here by a lawyer, Charles Kanjama, who says the Electoral Commission will have to train its staff to use the printed register again. So 3 days to the polls, doesn't this then put IEBC in a precarious position where they have to somehow short-circuit a lot of things? Now you are trained on the KIMS kit, now there's the manual voter register again. doesn't this then put the whole electoral system into disarray?
I agree with you, Trevor. We have had a lot of cases before the court that have affected the operations of the IEBC. But, Kenyans are litigious in nature. You cannot stop them from being litigants. And I think in as much as this particular directive of the High Court is coming at this stage, I don't think it's a very complicated directive as such. It's about, you see, one of the arguments that was before the High Court is that you have a digital register. What the IEBC was told is just print that register. It is the same register that is on that particular digital platform. It is a hard copy of that will be availed. I think, Trevor, in terms of just striking names out, it may not be a big deal. It may not be something that will frustrate the operations of the IEBC, because we anticipate that the manual register will be a reflection of the digital register. But I think, Trevor, the reason as to why I think this kind of conversation or discussion is coming up at this stage is, is because one of the presidential candidates, again, a serious presidential candidate, especially on the part of Azimio, is the one who is advocating for and championing for the use of manual register. So I think that is what is causing some worry on the other part of the political divide. They're asking themselves, why is politician X advocating for the use of manual register? But the onus is on the part of IEBC. IEBC shall have to first work with the primary platform, which is the digital register. In the event that particular platform fails, identification of the details of a voter using the KIMS kit. In the event it fails, again, IEBC has told us there's something called the alphanumeric search that shall be conducted. In the event that fails, that is when the IEBC shall resort to this particular final mechanism. The essence of this is just to make sure, in the event the first primary platforms fail, at least we should have a fallback plan. Trevor, I think the key argument that we need to have is, at all times, as technology fails, and I think data storage mechanisms have at some point in our stages proven faulty. So I think the biggest concern is just to say IEBC shall proceed with its plan as scheduled. But in the event that particular platform does not work, it may not work for all voters. It may work for majority of voters. In the event there might be a problem with a certain polling station, at least the voters shall not be disappointed and shall not have their right taken away over the failure of a technology mechanism. So I think at the end of the day, I don't see it as a big deal, but I think, Trevor, I think as a practitioner and as an advocate, I will be cautious to blame the courts at any stage. The Kenyans have a right to petition the courts at any stage. What the court considers is the right of one Kenyan is so important. It is so important for the court to give the necessary guidelines and necessary directive. And I think this is not a big deal. We can comply with it. Let IEBC avail the manual register. And I think it is IEBC that has brought us to this stage. IEBC could not address key concerns by these political players before. I think these questions were asked to IEBC. I have also followed journalists posting these questions to the chairperson. He could not assure them of the complementary mechanism talked about. He just told us the problems and the gaps that we can have with such a platform. But he could not give us an assured complementary mechanism. And I think that is what Section 44 of the Elections Act talked about. It's not a big deal. Let IEBC avail the manual register, and the manual register is simply a carbon copy of what is kept.
But Bashir, Section 44 that you're talking about talks about a complementary mechanism.
Correct.
That is not necessarily tantamount to a substitution of technology.
Exactly.
Correct.
That is what people...
And I think, Trevor, that is what I've also pointed out. I said the law talks about a complementary mechanism. A complementary mechanism is a mechanism that you will use in the event your first or your primary mechanism fails. And, we don't have any other mechanism at the moment. IEBC might tell you we have mechanism X, but still it is technology based. That is why we are finding ourselves back to this manual system. The whole question asked, if you follow if you had a look at the outcome and the judgment of that particular court, the judge asked IEBC, have you put in place the necessary administrative mechanism or necessary administrative platforms that will not disappoint a voter who avails himself at a polling station? Trevor, mind you, what IEBC submitted is that 1,111 polling stations that do not enjoy 3G and 2G network coverage. IEBC again may tell you we are just keeping the data on the KIMS kit. Data sources fail. Data storage platforms again fail. So the reason as to why we are talking about the manual register is about giving the people a fallback plan, a plan B. Use of technology can the kind of technology or the kind of options that we are given by IEBC are again tech-based that are not again 100% certain. What is 100% certain is the use of the manual register. I think for me what I'll be more concerned about is the stage at which we need to use or we shall use this manual register should be so tightened. You know, the only time that we shall use this particular manual register shall be at a point whereby the presiding officer shall have a communication, at least with the county returning officer, for us to have such platform. And I think that is also the directive that was given by the Court of Appeal in 2017. In 2017, the Court of Appeal talked about giving certain powers to the IEBC. Just before we don't end up using the manual register, the IEBC shall at least be given an opportunity to maybe consult. Okay. But at the end of the day, the rights of any single voter who avails himself at the polling station should not be jeopardized in the name of using a technology.
All right. Let's move on from this IBC conversation and talk about, still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Ruto claims anti-vote plan. Ruto alleges sinister plot in press briefing and ease in Kenya Kwanza. Deputy President William Ruto launches yet another scathing attack against President Kenyatta, accusing his boss, but without providing material evidence, of planning to disrupt the general election set for next Tuesday in Raila's favor. What comes to your mind, Wilkister, when you see such utterances and claims just 3 days to the polls as a young person?
Right. For me, it looks like Ruto is playing Raila in the previous elections, because this is exactly what Raila used to raise, you know, the electoral management body. It looks like it's being rigged in the favor of someone and stuff like that. But for me as a young person, you know, this sends fear to voters. It sends fear to young people, and particularly the supporters of these candidates. For example, the supporters of Ruto or the supporters of Raila in this particular scenario. So for me, it looks also that probably they need to tone down in terms of their utterances and some of the concerns that they raise. Because as you see, as Bashir mentioned earlier, that when, you know, Kenya Kwanza or Azimio coalitions put forward questions to the electoral management body, they were both answered. And the courts are open to everyone, every citizen within the country, or even people who are not even citizens. The court is open to everyone, because the rule of law has to, you know, take precedence. But when Raila raises these issues in the court, I mean, nothing stopped Ruto from raising similar issues or issues that he felt were pertinent to him. But I feel like he resorts to the off-the-cuff commentaries a lot, because there's also an emotional campaign at this point in time, and candidates are looking to whip emotions, but maybe get sympathy votes from whipping these emotions and stuff like that. So for me, it looks like it's a sinister motive. It's not, there's nothing genuine about him raising these concerns at this point in time.
Yeah. Bashir, what are your thoughts on this? The verbal tirade that's going on right now.
Trevor, I think for me, firstly, I find a very important player missing in this particular scenario. And that player is a creation of an act of parliament that is referred to as the National Cohesion and Integration Act of 2008. The NCIC has a very important role to play at this stage. And, you know, we don't even see it, you know, doing its role so well. This is the time the NCIC is supposed to crack the whip, at least, on politicians who are now trying to propagate hate speech. We have seen stories of leaflets being circulated in parts of the country, and I think we tend to have a feeling of a waste of taxpayers' money on a very important commission that, in the event it did its job right, we shall not be finding ourselves where we are at the moment. Where is it? It's not addressing this kind of hate questions that has come about. And I think if I give you my opinion on what is happening in our country, we are a few hours away from conducting from having our vote as a people of our country. But yesterday I followed what the Deputy President was saying when he was addressing the media. He talked about chiefs being forced to campaign and buy voters in certain parts of the region. And again, he said those chiefs have not accepted those directives given to them by the state. You know, then what is the point of now trying to raise that? You know, is there any problem then? Because at one point you are saying that chiefs are being used. Again, on the same platform, you're saying the chiefs have declined to accede to the request by senior state officials. Then did you suffer any problem? You know, there is no prejudice suffered by you at all. That is one thing I've observed. The second thing I've observed is that the Deputy President has again made scathing attacks on government officials. We have seen administrative officers. You know, Trevor, for us, we need this country intact during and after the general election. And I think one of the very crucial organs is the security apparatus of our country. That's a very important organ that will ensure that we shall have peace during and after the general election. If we end up losing faith in our security apparatus, what remains of us? And I think I find that to be very, very serious. And I think for me, on the flip side, I do not take it so little, the kind of concerns that are being raised by the Deputy President. You know, the DP has actually blamed the President. He said the President has presided over a meeting whose outcome is not so healthy. Again, he has proceeded to request the President to crack the whip on senior state officers who are involved in campaigns. At one point, again, you are blaming him for the President himself for partaking in politics and partaking in certain conversations that we are saying are not good for the country. Again, you are asking the President to take an action on those particular public officers. I think, Trevor, the biggest, and I know the biggest problem with the Deputy President, the biggest problem is the sitting President Uhuru Kenyatta has taken sides this time round. He's trying to campaign for one of the political candidates, one of the presidential candidates. And I think his biggest concern is that, you know, he is the head of state and government, even at the time that we shall be voting on that particular day, until the next president is sworn in, until he passes over the mantle to the incoming president. And I think his biggest concern is, if you do not have the sitting president by your side, might you be losing a lot? For me, if these are the kind of issues that he has raised, I think it's also important for the government agencies. I have had complaints that he has lodged against the Communication Authority of Kenya, and also the Kenya Power, you know, trying to say that they have disconnected power from the people of Kenya. And I think now these government agencies, you are the Deputy President, you are the sitting Deputy President at the moment. They come under you, you know, in as much as you may not be politically correct at the moment. Constitutionally, you have assumed office. You know, I think one of the critical things the Deputy President should have done is to write maybe a letter to communicate formally to these government officials to demand for answers. But I think what he has chosen is to now appeal himself to the people of Kenya by addressing by sharing his concerns with them. I think that should have been the last resort. The first thing that he should have done is to have formally put his complaints against these public officers. They come under him. Nobody can stop the Deputy President from meeting the county commissioners, the RCs. He can write formally to them. In the event he doesn't get the necessary answers, at least that's when he should have come to the people and address the people. And I think this kind of public addresses that he's now giving, it is not doing any good. It is just contributing to the heightened political tension that we have seen. Trevor, this is a time, even as a lawyer, I have some clients who I keep their monies in my account. These are investors who would have invested in our country, but everybody is saying, wait, I'm waiting for this general election to end. You know, for us, the general election is a big issue, but I think in other jurisdictions, it is a come and go issue that is about exercising a democratic right. These heightened conversations do not do us any good at all. All
right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're still talking about the use of Ngao, which is the National Government Administrative Officers in the elections right now. We'd like to hear your views as well at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. See you shortly.